The Widow, Episode 13. The rain fell heavily on that dark night, like tears on Isabel's face. The widow. A year had passed since the death of Ricardo, her great love, and the pain still burned within her. But then a mysterious smile appeared on Isabel's lips. A man, as charming as he was dangerous, had invaded her icy world. His name, Daniel. He looked at her with an intensity that left her breathless, a look that promised passion and danger in equal measure. But a greater danger loomed. The threatening shadow of Ricardo's brother hovered, ready to destroy everything Isabel was beginning to rebuild. What does he plan? The rain beat hard against the windows of the mansion, a frantic rhythm echoing the storm inside Isabel. A year since Ricardo, the man who filled her world with light, had been extinguished like a candle in the wind. The house, once a cozy home, was now a monument to longing, each corner whispering memories of a lost love. Isabel, the widow, walked the halls like a ghost, her soul enveloped in a cloak of mourning, her heart frozen in a block of ice. She had sworn never to love again, never to let anyone penetrate the walls of pain she had built around her wounded heart. But then he arrived, Daniel, with his smile that melted the thickest snow, with his dark eyes that seemed to hold all the secrets of the night, with his gentle gestures that broke the impenetrable armor Isabel had built. He was the sun in an eternal winter, the promise of a new dawn amidst the darkness. He looked at her, not with pity, not with sorrow, but with an admiration that made her feel alive again, a flame lit amidst the ashes. He saw her beyond the sadness, perceived the strong and independent woman who hid beneath the garments of mourning. And he wanted her, not with the haste of a conqueror, but with the delicacy of someone admiring a rare flower. Isabel, however, kept her defenses up. Each affectionate gesture from Daniel was met with hesitation. Each loving word was analyzed cautiously, as if she were on the brink of a precipice. She surrendered to his affections with a delicious fear, like a child approaching a fascinating flame, aware of the risk of burning herself. The attraction was undeniable, a powerful force that pulled her towards a new love, but the fear of betrayal, the memory of pain, kept her captive, swaying between the desire to surrender to happiness and the need to protect her fragile heart. But there was someone watching everything with hatred in his eyes, someone who harbored a dark and dangerous desire, Enrique, Ricardo's brother. Enrique had always loved Isabel, secretly a silent, suffering love, fueled by impossibility. He saw her as a possession, an inalienable right that had been stolen from him. The sight of Isabel smiling, of Isabel surrendering to love, was like a knife twisting in his chest. He couldn't bear the idea that someone else could take his brother's place, the place he always believed was rightfully his. The rain stopped. The sky opened, revealing a silvery moonlight that bathed the mansion in a ghostly light. Isabel was alone in her room, the image of Daniel reflected in her eyes. The memory of his kiss overwhelmed her, a delicious tremor running through her body, but a shadow fell on the window. A tall, hooded figure, Enrique, his gaze was so cold and calculating that even the moonlight seemed to shiver. He watched her, silently, like a Wolf waiting for the right moment to strike. In his hands an object gleamed faintly, a knife. It was a knife for choices, a knife for decisions. Isabel had to make a decision, embrace new happiness, despite the approaching danger, or succumb to the shadow of the past, forever imprisoned in the ice of mourning. Her heart, slowly melting, beat hard, desperately, a frantic tempo anticipating the sound of what was to come. Happiness was near, but danger lurked, invisible, like a serpent approaching an unsuspecting prey. And as Isabel hesitated, Enrique's figure approached, the gleam of the knife reflecting in his eyes full of hatred and vengeance as a harbinger of a new tragedy. What would happen next? Nobody knew for sure, only that the next scene promised more excitement and suspense than any other. Isabel's fate was about to be sealed. Enrique's shadow on the window was more menacing than the storm that had just passed. Isabel felt a chill run down her spine, even with the warmth of the recently extinguished desire for Daniel still present on her skin. The memory of the kiss, sweet and forbidden, now mingled with the glacial fear that Enrique emanated. He was the personification of darkness, the negation of everything Daniel represented, light, hope, a possible future. The knife in his hands glittered, a cruel symbol of his unwavering hatred. Enrique entered the room with heavy steps, breaking the silence of the night as if breaking Isabel's own heart. He didn't say a word. His gaze was enough to communicate all his fury, all his repressed pain, all his desire for revenge. It was a gaze that penetrated the soul, that froze hope and transformed it into despair. Isabel, unable to utter a single sound, felt a wave of terror completely overwhelm her. It was the feeling of a trap closing, of a cruel fate approaching. Enrique approached slowly, each step echoing in Isabel's ears like the sound of a death knell. The knife, now more visible under the ghostly moonlight, seemed to pulsate with a life of its own, a life fueled by the rage that consumed him. He stopped a few inches from her, breathing heavily, his eyes fixed on hers as if he could read her innermost thoughts. His proximity was suffocating, a physical and emotional pressure that left her breathless. Isabel tried to speak, but the words got lost in her throat, trapped in a knot of terror. The image of Daniel, so vivid in her mind moments before, now seemed distant, an unrealizable dream in the face of the imminent threat. The cruel reality of Enrique invaded all her senses, the smell of his perfume, the harshness of his presence, the mortal coldness of the blade he held. Suddenly, a noise from the door made them both turn. It was Daniel. He had seen Enrique's shadow through the window and had realized the situation. His gaze was hard, a mixture of surprise and anger shining in his eyes. He moved forward to protect Isabel, even knowing that he was facing a powerful and vengeful enemy. The fight between light and shadow was about to begin, a confrontation between newly discovered love and the fury of a broken heart. Daniel knew he was at a disadvantage, but his determination was greater than his fear. Enrique's knife gleamed in the light, threatening as Daniel lunged to prevent the tragedy from unfolding. The fight was quick, brutal, silent. The sound of bodies colliding, the heavy breathing, the metallic sound of the knife scraping on the floor. Isabel watched the scene, trapped in a stupor of fear and uncertainty. A muffled cry escaped her lips, a sound lost in the fury of that silent battle. Daniel fought with the ferocity of a wounded lion, his strength fueled by the love he felt for Isabel, a love that was put at risk in that mortal struggle. Enrique, in turn, fought with the force of despair, fueled by loss and unhealthy obsession. The fight dragged them across the room, knocking over furniture and objects in a frantic dance between life and death. At the height of the fight, Enrique's knife fell to the floor. Daniel took the opportunity, immobilizing Enrique and throwing him against a wall. The silence that followed the fight was heavy, oppressive. Isabel, still trembling with fear, realized the gravity of the situation. Daniel, despite having won the physical fight, was injured, and Enrique, even defeated, still emanated anger and hatred. The battle was over, but the war was far from over. The threat of Enrique remained, a silent danger capable of attacking at any moment. The love that blossomed between Isabel and Daniel, still so fragile, now faced an even stronger storm, a storm of hatred, vengeance, and despair. Doubt hung in the air. Would they be able to overcome this new challenge, or would the shadow of the past consume them forever? The rain stopped, but the storm inside Isabel continued. A year of mourning, a year of solitude, a year of ice surrounding her heart. And then Daniel. A ray of sunshine in her darkness, a smile that slowly melted the ice, a look that promised a new beginning. But the shadow of Enrique, Ricardo's brother, loomed like a black raven, ready to steal her happiness. The memory of Daniel's kiss still burned her, a delicious tremor mixed with fear. The image of Daniel's smile that night was almost a dream, a distant paradise that Enrique, with his icy presence, threatened to destroy. She found herself alone, the fragrance of Daniel's perfume still present on her sheets. When a shadow slipped through the window, covering the moon with its darkness, Enrique, his cold, icy gaze like the steel blade he held, pierced Isabel's soul. There were no words, only a silent hatred that emanated from him like toxic smoke. The knife gleamed under the ghostly moonlight, like a promise of death. Isabel felt her breath trapped in her throat, a knot of terror tightening her chest. Enrique approached slowly, each step like a nail being driven into the coffin of her hope. His presence was oppressive, cold, charged with a rancor so deep that it seemed to freeze the air around him. He stopped a few inches from her, his face almost touching hers, his icy breath touching her skin. The menacing knife was poised in the air, a few inches from her heart. It was the end, Isabel thought, the end of the little happiness she had found. She closed her eyes, awaiting the final blow, eternal darkness. But then, a dry sound of a door being forced open. Daniel, his eyes, once full of passion and tenderness, now shone with anger and determination. He had seen Enrique's silhouette, he knew the danger, and he had not hesitated to face Ricardo's brother's fury to protect Isabel. The fight began without words, a frantic dance of bodies amidst the disorganized furniture of the room. Enrique's knife gleamed, describing deadly arcs in the air, while Daniel faced him with the strength of passionate despair. The two rolled on the floor, a brutal and silent fight, interrupted only by heavy breathing and the metallic sound of the knife scraping on the floor. Isabel watched everything, petrified, caught between fear and hope. Each blow, each fall, each groan was a fight between light and shadow, between reborn passion and old pain. Daniel, with the strength of his newly discovered love, fought with the ferocity of a wild animal, defending the woman who had conquered his heart. Enrique, driven by an unhealthy obsession, fought for possession of Isabel, a possession he felt as a sacred right, even if that right meant death. At the height of the fight, in a moment of carelessness, Enrique's knife fell. Daniel, quick as a panther, took advantage of the gap and immobilized the enemy, throwing him against the wall with brute force. The physical fight was over, but the war was just beginning. Enrique, defeated but not conquered, still emanated hatred, a fury that promised new and terrible consequences. Daniel, wounded, breathed with difficulty, his body covered in scratches. Isabel, finally finding her voice, screamed, a cry of relief, of terror, and of love, a cry that echoed among the wreckage of the fight, a cry that echoed the uncertainty of the future. The fragility of new happiness in the face of such ingrained and persistent hatred. What would come next? Only time would tell. Enrique's shadow still loomed, a silent danger, and the fragility of the newly discovered passion balanced on the edge of a sword. Enrique's knife lay on the floor, its cold gleam now extinguished. Daniel, breathless, kept Enrique pressed against the wall, his muscles tense, his body wounded. Isabel, dazed, watched the scene, a whirlwind of emotions overwhelming her, the fear that still chilled her, the joy of having escaped death, and the love for Daniel, stronger than ever. But the victory seemed fragile, ephemeral. The hatred in Enrique's eyes was a flame that could reignite at any moment. He spat on the floor, a gesture of contempt that echoed his implacable hatred. Daniel, despite the pain, felt the triumph. Adrenaline still propelled him, but exhaustion approached like a wave. He looked at Isabel, his eyes meeting hers in a moment of deep connection, a silent acknowledgment of the battle fought and the danger that still lurked. A smile, weak but hopeful, appeared on his wounded lips. Suddenly, a thunderous noise. The front door burst open violently, the wood creaking in protest. Two hooded figures entered the mansion, their heavy footsteps echoing down the corridor. The shadows moved like specters from hell, their faces hidden, but the threat was palpable, emanating from them like a bad omen. Enrique, taking advantage of the distraction, gave Daniel a strong push, sending him crashing to the floor. Isabel screamed, the sound tearing through the tense silence that followed. The thugs approached, each with a weapon in hand. The weapons gleamed under the moonlight, reflections of cold steel that threatened Isabel and Daniel. The safety they seemed to have achieved, moments before, now vanished, replaced by pure, undisguised terror. The fight was not over yet. It was only the beginning of a new battle, more dangerous than the previous one. Enrique's shadow, now accompanied by other shadows, seemed to stretch across the mansion, enveloped in an atmosphere of increasing violence. Isabel found herself in the center of a hurricane of violence, caught between newly discovered love and the imminent threat of death. That hopeful smile of Daniel's was now fading, replaced by a look of struggle and despair. The light was about to be extinguished, and darkness, vengeance, threatened to consume everything in its path. What will happen to Isabel and Daniel? Will they be able to survive this new threat? Who are these mysterious men? The answer only in the next episode of The Widow.